We are not alone in this vast cosmos, and sometimes history whispers the voice of the divine. Welcome to Mysterious Universe, where science meets wonder and truth echoes through the silence of space. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you never miss another cosmic revelation. And if you've been walking with us through the mysteries of the universe, welcome back, fellow seeker. Today, we're going to step back into time, to an era of courage, ambition, and wonder. But this isn't just a history lesson. This is about something deeper, something spiritual. In July 1969, humanity made what we thought was our first great leap, setting foot on the moon. We called it science. We called it exploration. But what if, beyond the dust and rock, there was a higher meaning, a celestial nudge, a whisper from God Himself? Because between 1969 and 1972, we did something absolutely unimaginable by today's standards. NASA accomplished not one, but 6 successful manned landings on the moon. In just 3 years. Why the rush? Why then? And why? Did we stop? From miraculous survivals to unexplained anomalies, from near-fatal electrical failures to strange seismic phenomena, something was guiding us, watching us, maybe even warning us. Could it be that the journey to the moon wasn't just about conquering the heavens, but about receiving a message? Could it be that God, the great creator, allowed us to touch the skies, not to claim it, but to remember who made it? In this video, we'll walk through the secret stories behind Apollo 11 to Apollo 17. The dangers, the triumphs, the divine fingerprints scattered across the stars, and the signs that maybe, just maybe, heaven has been trying to get our attention all along. Are you ready? Then buckle in. Because what you thought you knew about the moon landing is only half the story. Let me know in the comments. Do you believe humanity's race to the moon was guided by something higher? Or was it pure science alone? It was July 20th, 1969. The whole world stood still as Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon and uttered those immortal words. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. But what if it wasn't just a leap of science? What if it was something more? Something sacred? The Apollo 11 mission is remembered as a stunning triumph of engineering. But behind the cameras and calculations, there are moments that make you wonder, was this really human achievement alone? Or was there a higher hand guiding us beyond Earth? As the lunar module Eagle descended toward the moon's surface, disaster loomed. A series of cryptic computer alarms, code 1201, 1202, errors NASA had never encountered during a live mission, flashed across the screens. Mission control went tense. They were moments away from aborting the landing. But then, a quiet voice from Houston. You are go for landing. Only seconds of fuel remained, only inches to spare. And yet, they made it. A miracle? Or the calm whisper of the Creator in humanity's moment of fear? But here's something few people know. Before stepping out of the lander, Buzz Aldrin paused and took Holy Communion. Yes, right there, in the silence of the lunar module, Buzz opened a small vial of wine and a piece of bread. He read scripture, and he prayed, I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me, and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. John 15:5. He shared communion with God before sharing the moon with mankind. He didn't do it for the cameras. He did it in reverence, in awe, in the presence of a vast universe that seemed almost watching. Think about that. The first act ever performed by a human on another world was not a declaration of conquest, but a moment of worship. Now ask yourself, was this mission a technical marvel, or was it the first echo of something divine? What do you believe? Was Apollo 11 merely science and ambition, or a sign from God that we were ready to step into the heavens? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're listening. And so is the universe. Just 4 months after Apollo 11, on a stormy November morning in 1969, another crew stood atop the mighty Saturn V rocket. Their mission, Apollo 12. Their goal, precision landing near an old robotic lander called Surveyor 3. But what happened next was something no simulation could prepare them for. At exactly 36 seconds after liftoff, a bolt of lightning struck the rocket. And then, just 16 seconds later, it was struck again. Inside the cockpit, all systems went haywire. Lights flashing. Instruments dead. The spacecraft lost power, guidance, and communications, while soaring at 14,000 feet and climbing fast. It should have been fatal, a fiery end, another tragedy written in skyfire. But then, a quiet voice from Mission Control. One engineer, John Aaron, remembered a similar scenario during a simulation. He uttered 4 words that would save the mission. Try SCE to AUX. The command was obscure. Only one astronaut, Alan Bean, even knew what it meant, but he flipped the switch, and the spacecraft roared back to life. Systems restored, trajectory corrected, mission back on course. The media called it luck, engineers called it preparation, but many who witnessed it called it something else entirely. Providence. How do you explain 2 lightning strikes, total system failure, and a miraculous recovery, all within seconds? Was this just coincidence, or was someone watching? As the Apollo 12 crew journeyed toward the moon, the question lingered. Was there a force, greater than equations, protecting them from the storm? When they finally touched down on the lunar surface, just 538 feet from their target, they made history. The first precise landing on the moon. And though the TV broadcast failed, blinded when astronaut Alan Bean accidentally pointed the color camera at the sun, the world was still watching. Because what they were doing wasn't just exploration. It was sacred navigation into the unknown. What do you think? Were they just lucky? Or was this a warning wrapped in mercy? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe in divine protection in space? April 1970. The world was watching again as Apollo 13 soared into the heavens. It was supposed to be routine, if landing on another world could ever be called that. Veteran astronaut Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Heise were headed to the Fra Mauro region of the moon. But 56 hours into the flight, everything changed. An explosion shook the spacecraft. Oxygen tank number 2 just blew, reported Jack Swigert. Then came those chilling words. Houston, we've had a problem. The explosion crippled the service module. Power drained, oxygen leaking, carbon dioxide rising. They were more than 200,000 miles from Earth. Too far to turn back, too close to disaster. What followed was nothing short of a miracle in motion. NASA engineers worked around the clock, repurposing parts of the lunar module to keep the crew alive. The astronauts turned their lander into a lifeboat. They endured freezing cold, hunger, and rising CO2 levels. With duct tape, cardboard, and plastic bags, the ground team guided the astronauts in building a filter to clean the air. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. And through all of this, the world prayed. Churches rang their bells. People gathered in living rooms, whispering rosaries and lighting candles. For the first time, many saw the vast cold of space, not just as adventure, but as fragile territory where only divine mercy could reach. And then, against all odds, Apollo 13 returned home. The capsule streaked across the sky and splashed down safely in the Pacific. All 3 astronauts survived. Some called it the triumph of ingenuity. Others, a reminder that man proposes, but God disposes. Was the explosion just a mechanical fault? Or was it a divine intervention, gently pulling humanity back from its pride, reminding us we are not gods? We had rushed to the moon with confidence, but after Apollo 13, the world paused and trembled, because for a moment we all felt it. The silence of space isn't just absence, it's echo, a place where the Creator listens and sometimes answers. What do you believe saved Apollo 13? Human genius or God's hand? Comment below. Let's hear your voice in the stars. February 1971. After the near tragedy of Apollo 13, the world watched Apollo 14 with bated breath. America needed hope. NASA needed redemption. And leading the mission was none other than Alan Shepard, the very first American in space. At 47 years old, he was the oldest Apollo astronaut to ever walk on the moon. But with age came wisdom and perhaps faith. Yet from the start, trouble returned. The docking maneuver between the command module and lunar module failed, not once, but 6 times. One misalignment, and the mission would be scrubbed. No landing, no redemption. And then, something strange. Commander Shepard calmly disabled the electronics and relied solely on his eyes and instincts, guiding the docking procedure manually. Like a pilot landing with no instruments, like a shepherd in the night sky guided by a higher light, he succeeded. It was as if someone, or something, whispered to him, "Trust what I've already given you." When they finally descended to the lunar surface, America collectively exhaled. The landing was a masterpiece of precision, just 87 feet from the target site. The moon welcomed them again, and then came a moment of wonder no one expected. Alan Shepard, standing beneath the black void of heaven, reached into his suit. He pulled out a 6-iron golf club. With 2 golf balls tucked in his pocket, Shepard prepared for something no one had trained for. He swung. The first shot, a slice. The second, pure contact. A golf ball arced silently across the moon, soaring farther than any ever hit on Earth. He laughed, we laughed. But in that light-hearted swing, something deeper stirred. In a place untouched by wind, by water, or by time, a human being brought joy. In the silence of the cosmos, where stars shine like silent witnesses, one man reminded the universe, we're still children, trying to play in God's garden. Back on Earth, the world watched and smiled. Apollo 14 wasn't just about science. It was about restoration, renewal, and remembering why we dream. And perhaps somewhere beyond those craters, the Creator looked down on his children and whispered, "Yes, you may go further, but do not forget me when you get there." What do you think Shepard's golf swing meant for humanity? A joke? A miracle? Or a message? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's explore the mystery together. July 1971. The game had changed. No longer just quick visits to the moon's surface, NASA was now committed to deeper exploration. And Apollo 15 was built for just that. The mission introduced 2 major upgrades: a lunar roving vehicle, an electric dune buggy, the first car ever driven on another world, and a more advanced scientific kit, allowing astronauts to stay 3 full days on the surface. But it wasn't the technology that would make this mission unforgettable. It was what they found. As astronauts Dave Scott and Jim Irwin bounced across the lunar plains, they weren't just collecting rocks. They were searching for history. Not human history, but creation's footprint. In the Hadley Apennine region, near the base of a towering lunar mountain, they found it, a small, white rock, unremarkable at first glance. But when studied, it told a cosmic story. Scientists would later call it the Genesis Rock. Why? Because this piece of the moon was formed over 4.1 billion years ago, from the very beginnings of our solar system. It was pure and orthosite, forged during the moon's violent birth, when it was still molten and forming its crust. Holding this rock was like touching time, like reaching into the furnace of the Creator's hand and pulling out the cooled breath of Genesis. It wasn't just a rock, it was a relic from the moment God whispered the stars into being. During their stay, Scott and Irwin performed one of the most symbolic demonstrations in spaceflight history. They dropped a feather and a hammer simultaneously on the moon. In the vacuum, with no air resistance, both objects fell at exactly the same rate, proving Galileo's theory of gravity. But it was more than physics. In the stillness of the moon, as two objects fell side by side, it felt like something divine, as if the laws of the universe were still being written in real time, as if gravity itself obeyed a higher order, one set not by man, but by the architect of all things. And then came the personal moment, one rarely spoken about. Jim Irwin, the lunar module pilot, had a quiet but profound spiritual experience on the moon. Later, he would say, "I felt the power of God as I'd never felt it before." Surrounded by silent rocks and endless sky, Irwin sensed something no instrument could measure. He returned to Earth a changed man, eventually devoting his life to Christian ministry, believing that walking on the moon was not the pinnacle, but the beginning of a new mission. Apollo 15 was a success by every scientific standard. But perhaps its greatest gift was this: a glimpse of our origin through the Genesis rock, a nudge toward our Creator through Jim Irwin's awakening, a reminder that even as we drive vehicles across foreign worlds, we are still, always, being guided. What do you think the Genesis rock teaches us? Is it just lunar geology, or a cosmic message carved in stone? Share your thoughts below. We're listening. April 1972. NASA launched Apollo 16, sending astronauts John Young, Ken Mattingly, and Charles Duke into orbit, their destination, the lunar highlands. It was the first mission to target the ancient, rugged mountains of the moon, places long believed to be the remnants of massive volcanoes. The goal? Search for proof of early lunar eruptions and bring back samples that could answer the question, was the moon once alive with fire? But the trip didn't start smoothly. Once again, docking complications between the command module and lunar lander threatened the entire mission. 6 failed attempts, 6 tense tries. In moments like this, courage isn't about boldness, it's about persistence under pressure. And it was Commander John Young's calm resolve, combined with Charles Duke's precision, that saved the day. They overrode the electronics and performed a manual docking, Jedi-style, as some engineers jokingly said. Their reward? A smooth landing in the Descartes Highlands, a place no human had ever stood before. But the real surprise came not from the landscape, but from what it wasn't. There were no volcanic rocks, no signs of fire-borne eruptions. Instead, the surface was shattered, uplifted, and scattered. Not by fire, but by force. What they found was evidence of ancient asteroid impacts, so immense they had lifted the lunar crust, reshaping the land into peaks and valleys. The highlands weren't built by creation, but by destruction. Not born, but forged by chaos. It was a cosmic paradox. The oldest parts of the moon were not peaceful relics. They were war zones frozen in time. And then came one of the most haunting reports from the moon: the smell of moon dust. When astronauts tracked lunar soil back into the lander and removed their helmets, they were stunned. They said it smelled like gunpowder, and it felt greasy, clinging to their suits like fine ash. "It smelled like spent ammo," said Duke, "like something had burned and was waiting to ignite again." But there's no oxygen on the moon, no fire, no combustion. So where did that smell come from? To this day, no one truly knows. Some say it's just chemical interaction. Others wonder if it's something more, a residue of celestial violence. Or maybe, just maybe, it's a trace of something we weren't meant to understand. But perhaps the most human moment came not from science, but from emotion. As Charles Duke walked on the surface, he left behind something incredibly personal. A family photo, sealed in plastic, placed gently on the lunar dust. A man, his wife, and his kids, left on a world where no wind would move it and no rain would ever wash it away. It still lies there today, a silent witness to the fact that even on distant worlds, we carry the ones we love. Apollo 16 wasn't just a mission of discovery. It was a mission of redefinition. It shattered theories, it uncovered scars, and it reminded us that the moon is not a blank canvas. It's a page in the Creator's notebook, filled with marks of fury and moments of grace. What do you think the moon's highlands are trying to tell us? Are these impact scars echoes of creation or whispers of warning? Comment below and share your interpretation. We want to hear your voice in this cosmic conversation. December 7, 1972. The world watched as three men soared into space aboard Apollo 17, the final mission of the legendary Apollo program. But few realized they were watching the end of an era. By now, public interest in moon landings had faded. The miracle had become routine. The divine mystery of exploration had been dulled by the noise of politics and economics. Yet, NASA had one last masterpiece to unveil. And what a masterpiece it was! For the first time in history, a scientist, not just a pilot or a soldier, was going to walk on the moon. Dr. Harrison Schmitt, a trained geologist, was chosen to land in the Taurus-Littrow Valley, a place surrounded by steep mountains, deep canyons, and ancient rock formations, a geological treasure chest untouched by time. This was not just another trip, it was a pilgrimage, a final attempt to read the story written in stone on the lunar surface, before the chapter would close indefinitely. Apollo 17 became the longest lunar mission ever conducted. Over 75 hours on the surface, more than 22 hours of moonwalks, over 36 kilometers traveled using the lunar rover. They reached places no astronaut had ever dared to go, as far as 7 kilometers from the landing site, mapping valleys, craters, and strange rock formations. But what they discovered was stunning. Orange soil. Beneath the moon's ever-gray surface, Harrison Schmitt uncovered a patch of vivid orange. At first glance, it made no sense. The moon was supposed to be colorless, lifeless, but this soil, when analyzed, was filled with tiny glass beads, formed by ancient volcanic eruptions more than 3.6 billion years ago. They were remnants of fire once spewed from deep within the moon's interior, a sign that this seemingly dead world had once burned with energy, movement, and transformation. To the trained eye, it was more than geology. It was a cosmic message, as if the moon itself were whispering, "I, too, was once alive." In total, Apollo 17 returned to Earth with 110 kilograms of lunar rock and soil, the largest haul of any mission, a time capsule of the solar system's early days. These rocks would become the foundation of modern lunar science. But they were more than science samples. They were souvenirs of awe, fragments of something greater, a divine design written in minerals and pressure, shaped by both creation and destruction. And then the footprints stopped. Commander Eugene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon, stood at the edge of the ladder and looked back. Before ascending, he spoke these words, "As I take man's last step from the surface, I'd like to just say that I believe history will record that America's challenge of today has forged man's destiny of tomorrow. And as we leave the moon at Taurus-Littrow, we leave as we came, and God willing, as we shall return, with peace and hope for all mankind." Then, silence. The moon was empty once again. But in that silence, there was something more. A stillness not of absence, but of waiting. Like a cathedral in the dark, the lunar surface remains untouched for over half a century. And in its dust, lie 6 American flags, abandoned landers, rovers, and the echoes of human ambition. Was it only a technical feat? Or was it a moment in which God allowed us to glimpse the works of His hand, to touch a world He had crafted long before we ever dreamed of spaceflight? Perhaps the Creator of the universe, in His infinite wisdom, gave us this opportunity to reach beyond ourselves, not only to understand the stars, but to remember that we are not alone. Each mission was not just an engineering triumph. It was a spiritual calling to humble ourselves in the vastness of the cosmos, to be stewards of wonder, to stand in the dust and look up and know we were invited. Why do you think humanity stopped going to the moon? Was it money, politics, or something deeper? A fear that what we might find would change everything? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe we'll return? And should we? We did it. We walked on the moon. We planted flags, ran experiments, played golf, even dropped hammers and feathers just to watch them fall in perfect silence. But when the engines cooled and the dust settled, what remained was not just science. It was a message, one not spoken in words, but written into the stars. When you look up at the moon tonight from your backyard in Ohio or your balcony in California, you're not just looking at a gray rock. You're looking at the first frontier we crossed, not just with rockets, but with faith. Could it be that God allowed us to reach the moon, not to prove our dominance over creation, but to remind us of how fragile, how interconnected, and how small we really are? Maybe it wasn't about planting a flag. Maybe it was about planting humility. Apollo wasn't just a mission. It was a moment when humanity stood on another world and looked back at itself. And maybe, just maybe, God was watching, not to stop us, but to see if we would bring back more than moon rocks. Would we bring back wisdom? As we face climate change, rising tensions, wars, and division, we have to ask, is the silence of space actually a warning? You reached the stars, He whispers, but have you truly reached each other? Perhaps the next great leap won't be measured in miles, but in compassion, in unity, in how far we're willing to go, not away from Earth, but toward one another. What do you think? Should we go back to the moon? Should we go to Mars? And more importantly, should we look inside before we look up again? Tell us in the comments below. And if this message speaks to you, if you believe that space exploration is not just about discovery, but about divine reflection, hit that subscribe button and stay with us on this cosmic journey. Because here at Mysterious Universe, we believe the stars aren't just distant. They're spiritual. The cosmos isn't just physics. It's a cathedral of meaning, and every mission into space is also a mission into the soul. Until next time, keep looking up, because out there, in the deep black, God might just be waiting for us to listen.